Welcome to everyone who's joining us this afternoon. My name's Elaine Gelder, and as you can see from my bio, those of you that haven't come across me before, I am the Director of Education for LanguageNut and have been now for 3 years. I work part-time for the company and do lots of other things as well in my other 2 days when I don't work for LanguageNut. I've worked across many schools over my 35 years in teaching, and my last main job in actually working in the classroom on a full-time basis was a senior director for a large and high-performing multi-academy academy chain. As I'm sure you're aware, the language community is one of the most giving communities. They are love to share resources, and everyone I come across are so thankful of the massive community that we have on Facebook and also on Twitter and Instagram, where everybody's happy to share resources, and we are very mindful of that with this PowerPoint. That most of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight are things that I've been directly involved with, but a few of them, and I will acknowledge those tonight, are ones that I've seen in the classroom or people I've spoken to. But it's important to note that the resources that you will be sent after this recording, looked at very. I think it's better to look at them alongside the video, the actual recording of this session. But we would definitely like to thank the community of teachers in languages for constantly working with us, LanguageNut, and sharing ideas with us whenever we talk to teachers. They give us loads of ideas and talk to us and give us loads of things that they're happy to share. Please be aware that if your school has its own particular way of teaching, then it's always to be mindful of that. So all the ideas that we're sharing on this webinar this afternoon are suggestions and are not mandatory. And obviously your own institution may well have their own way of doing things, and you don't want to leave them in a vulnerable position should you be inspected. So tonight's session is a session that I ran in March at the beginning. I think it was second weekend in March when I spoke at the ALL conference down in Kenilworth. And I think if you're not a member of ALL, then it's a great organisation to be part of, and it's something which I've been involved with for 35 years, as long as I've been teaching, and I've always found loads of ideas and great CPD. So it was great to be able to speak at the conference. And for those of you that are not members of the ALL or if you're not a member of the LL, you may well have not been at the conference either, or you may well have been. This session is very much a similar session to what I ran at the conference. So we thought it was a good idea to put this on again and just make it, I think the session at the conference was about 30 minutes. This one is just going to be about 40 minutes, just a little bit run over with some more ideas that I've put into it as well. So kind of this session is more really to deal with elevating your language teaching, and maximising the outcomes, not just for yourself, for your pupils, but also for yourself. So it's kind of something that how it ain't what you do, it's all about how you do it, and how does that help you as a teacher to make your life easier in terms of the amount of work you have to do, and also hopefully help you to make some good decisions moving forward to teaching the new GCSE that's just about to come in September for the year 10s. So those of you that are in teaching in your first year as an ECT, as we call them in England and Wales, or in your second year, because it's now a 2-year programme, or for those of you that are doing you're actually training, here's a link how it links to the teacher standards. I'm not going to go through that tonight, but if you need to have a certificate after this session that highlights how this training links to the teacher standards, which you would find useful to have in your portfolio or to have evidence for a particular thing that you need, then please do use my email at the end and contact me, and I'm more than happy to send you a certificate out which shows you how it links to these teacher standards, which would hopefully be evidence for you in your portfolio. Okay, so first of all, some of the things that I've done, it's all about how you do it. It's all about creating a kind of sense of belonging in a classroom, really, about being able to say, we are in this together, and being able to make your students understand that you actually want to have a little bit of, I don't know, not kind of personal details, but you want to make them feel that they belong in your classroom, because that does help with building relationships and it helps with being able to then move forward with your teaching. So one of the things that I always did when I was teaching full-time was building or trying to build that sense of belonging in your teaching environment. I would always get my students in English to introduce themselves to me. And I would ask them to write it in a book or on a piece of paper. And I would ask them to tell me as much information as they could about themselves. I would always have a set of ground rules where they were not allowed to use any rude words or any dissing or nasty things about teachers, and also to give me reasons for opinions of things. So I would ask them to give me some information about themselves, what they were interested in, what might make learning better for them, what kind of positive experiences have they had in their learning journey through school since they were little. If they had to talk to me about anything they were interested in, having any particular hobbies, any strengths, any things they found really difficult. And then I would allow them to do that as a homework in English. And sometimes they would give it me in a poster. Sometimes they might take some pictures and put it on a piece of paper, or they might send it me as an email. Sometimes some of them did it as a recording. They would put it on their phones, or just send me a little bit of a mind map, or some of them just came with some just like pictures about what their family was about what their hobbies about. I had one student came and he just brought me a football, and he said, "This is what I like to do. My world is football." It was just all about getting to know the students so that they feel that they belong, and that I knew what I could do in my lessons going forward to kind of make the lessons more interesting and try and hook into their learning and their lives. And then I would use anything that I could find from this information that the class gave me. And I would use it as recurring characters or recurring themes in my work. And I wouldn't necessarily highlight it and say, oh, today we're looking at something that Stuart in my lesson mentioned, that he likes going, out to the club, out to the cinema, or out to the club with his dad to play darts. I wouldn't make a big thing of it. But you could often see students who gave me certain types of information. They're kind of, if you caught their eye in the lesson, they would look at you as much to say, yeah, you've actually understood what I've said. And I wouldn't make a big thing of these coming in, because sometimes they would come in after 2 weeks, sometimes they would come in after 3, sometimes I wouldn't get them at all. But you would always try your best to try and go to a boy or girl who's not handed anything in and say to them, "You've not handed in that piece of work I asked you to at the beginning of the term." And they would then, if you do it in a way that you kind of do it quite understated, they will bring you in so that at some stage you can hook into a piece of learning. This is an example of what I'm talking about. So here I had a boy in year 10 who was extremely disaffected and wasn't switched on at all in languages when he started in year 9. In year 10, he suddenly came out of the woodwork and decided he would give me a little bit of information. So he told me he was all into fishing. So what we decided to do with that was, over the course of the 12 months and also into the year 11, by the time he got into year 11, he was still as disaffected, but he wasn't as much as a problem in the classroom. So I kind of looked about the resources I could do with fishing. So I thought about a photo card to do with fishing. And here we've got a picture here. This is not the boy's picture. This is a photograph that I found online that I thought might come in useful and be able to talk about that in one lesson. We looked at the bottom. We looked at a role play based upon what you might need to do if you went fishing, what kind of clothing you would buy. This is in German. Talking about, I want to go fishing this weekend and I need the right clothing. So we did kind of like a transactional role play, which would fit into the new Pearson transactional vocab, transactional role plays that are for the new specification. We looked at kind of a piece of reading in the top with the picture about what it's like to be part of a young person's fishing club and what you need for a young person's fishing license. And then we also, on the left-hand side, looked about what we could do to book onto an online fishing course to get an actual fishing qualification or a fishing license or something that to do with fishing to enable you to, get more proficient at it. And we looked at this thing in Munich. And it was quite interesting to see how we engaged with this. And I didn't do this like as a full project. We just drip fed it in across a few weeks and a few months. It's just one example. So in terms of behaviour, what have I done in my past few years, in my past 35 years of teaching to basically improve behaviour, and how have I gone about doing it? Well, I was lucky enough one time in one school to be able to have single sex groupings, and I found that worked tremendously. In fact, it's probably one of the most successful projects that I've ever done in my teaching career, where I'd had enough staff in my team to be able to put boys separately from girls. And I looked at my team and I decided who were the better people teaching the sync, the boys and the girls. And our pass rate went up by 39% over 2 years doing that. And I left after the second set of results were out to move on to another school. And I never had the opportunity to do that again. But I, from my own experience, found that to be extremely empowering with the results. Also, when the kids are stood in the corridor, if you have to get them lined up before they come into your room or as they come in, I know this might be a little bit not possible to do, but all things of, oh, I love your hair, looks very smart, or love your nails, you know, even if they've got them trimmed nicely. A lot of schools don't allow the girls to wear nail varnish or the boys to wear long nails, but that has worked for me in some schools where behaviour has been a difficult issue, and some girls have obviously got away with their nails being painted. And I've just had a little bit of like a little bit of a chat. I said, love your nails, love your hair, love your earrings, just that kind of like sense of belonging, that your students belong in your class and that you're taking interest in them. I've had a lot of the time, I think this is not teaching grandma to suck eggs here, because a lot of this you probably do yourself, but it's just sometimes nice to have a bit of a refresh, particularly at this time of year when you're all tired trying to get through your speaking exams. And if you watch this later on as well, it's just a good refresh to think, I've not done that for a while, I'll have a go at that. So sometimes I would have music to complete activities, and I've often linked that with the reward. So if I've had some students who have done really well, who've improved, or even just done really well anyway, I've said to them, right, would you like to choose some music for the next couple of lessons? And we'll have a little bit of that in the background, or we've used a bit of a snippet of it to complete an activity, and we've done it to add a little bit of pace to the lesson. What's in it for me? On the next slide, I'll show you an example of some of the stepped rewards that I've used. So I'll part that now until we're on the next page, on the next slide, sorry. I give points to students. So we'll have a whiteboard and they'll tally the points up. I might give one row 4 points if they're doing really well, if I see the whiteboards going up really quickly, or I'll just throw points out willy-nilly to students, or somebody who will give me an answer might get 2 points and they can choose somebody else in the class to get another point. So that means that they get 2 and a partner gets 1. I've used points in many different ways. And again, if anybody's interested in seeing a document with all that in, you can obviously email me after the session. Secret student is another thing that I know has been around for a very long time, but I've used it quite a lot in schools. And basically the way that works is you put a post-it under the chair the first time that you meet the class. And at the end of the lesson, you ask them all to stand up, see what's under their seat. And the child that's got a yellow post-it, if they've had a really good lesson, then the whole class will get a reward in terms of whatever that reward you deem to be appropriate for that particular lesson. Often it's just points, or it's house points, or it's whatever you've got in your school as credits, or whatever you call it, to reward good work and good behaviour. And I've carried that on, not by just keeping the post-it under the chair, because after you've done that once, it becomes, well, it's obsolete basically. So I've kind of like done all different ways of using the secret student. And again, I can give you some ideas of that if you wanted some. Obviously using different class competitions, and Language Note, we run lots of competitions throughout the year. And if you're part of a trust, we can sort that out for you as well. The chips, we'll talk about that in a second because that's on the next slide. And scratch cards, I've put an example here of a scratch card. Unfortunately, I worked in one school where the head wouldn't allow me to use these because he said it was encouraging gambling. And I understand that, so I stopped using them. And the way you do it is you buy these on Amazon, they're quite cheap, and you type out your kind of rewards and you put this on top of the reward, and then you cut them up and you hand them out. And then all the children have to do is scratch it, and they see the words that are underneath that you've typed. And that's quite a good fun way of giving rewards out. And then setting mini deadlines is something that I've always done. So the dates in the planner. So at the beginning of a year, I've said, right, week 7 of term 1, we'll watch a 10-minute clip of a film, or week 15 or week 3 of term 2, we're going to have a French breakfast. And I've always got them to put these little mini deadlines in their planners, and then as time goes on, I've said, right, 2 weeks to go, 1 week to go, 4 weeks to go, 3 weeks to go. But if you're going to do that, it does help with the students to keep them focused, because if you keep reminding them, and I've even had it on a ticker tape running across a PowerPoint with some classes which have been really, really difficult to teach. And just so that you know that they know that you're actually going to do what you're going to do, so they can see you're actually not just going to say that in week 3 we're going to have a French breakfast. You can actually do it, but boy, you've got to make sure that you do it and you stick to those dates if that's what you're going to do, because they will hold you to it. So this is the one I talked about with the chips. This is from a colleague of mine, Fiona, who's manning the chat today. I know Fiona's used this quite a lot when she was teaching, and so it's self-explanatory. The students at the beginning of the year, half term, whichever is appropriate for you, they will get 100 chips for vocab recall. Step 1, the students place bets on how many questions they think they will get right in a particular exercise or a vocab quiz. Step 2, they place bets on how many questions they think they got right after they've done it. And then step 3, they have a chance to double or nothing on their original bet, and then they work out their winnings. And that's something to do. Obviously, not going to do it with every single piece of work, but it's really good fun to do it occasionally, and just to kind of like keep the students on their toes that they're going to have that lesson with that particular activity, that this reward with that activity. Excuse me. This has always been what I've called my what's in it for me stepped reward system, and this is self-explanatory, but I've kind of done it in the way that I might do it. So the classroom praise, just giving a child a nod can sometimes be quite a big praise, because they don't even probably get noticed in some lessons, or a well done. Some students find a well done or even just speaking to them in lesson quite overwhelming. So you will get to know your pupils as time goes on. But here is again a very structured way of doing it, and rather than shooting all your bullets at one time by sending a letter out to parents to say, oh, your son or daughter's done really, really well, it's about kind of like stepping it and just like having mini steps there to see what the students have done. And we're all under extreme pressure with time, I understand that, and it's how you can use this best to work best for your classes and your students. So the next thing I'm going to look at is about content, and it's moving towards the new GCSE that all of us know is coming in 2024, and those of us that are already teaching a 3-year Key Stage 4, which some schools I know do because I've done it myself, you will already be in this into Year 9. You'll already be a term, 2 terms into it now anyway, two terms in a bit. So I've been working quite a lot with schools and with Academy Trusts since, I would say, since I took this job with Language Note. I still do a lot of work outside my kind of normal day. People ask me all sorts of things, what would you do about this? And I don't kind of like mind that, because I feel that I've got a lot to give back, a lot of my experience. I'm not an expert, I learn something new every day, but I do have a lot of experience. So I think you need to think about what and by how much do you need to tweak what you already do, because I've seen a lot on Facebook and a lot on every manner of social media there is, about people starting again. For me, having gone through several changes of GCSE over my time as a teacher, I've never done that. I've never, that's never going to work. Even when coursework was brought in, there was always something, or large chunks of schemes of work that we've had before that we've always been able to redo and reuse. So I would be mindful of that. What and by how much do you need to tweak? Helen Myers has done a fantastic blog, and when you get this PowerPoint, you'll be able to click on that and it will take you straight to the blog there. You'll be able to see how Helen has looked at each of the exam boards. Well, each of them, there's only 2 now, because obviously I no longer do languages, and Educas are pulled out, although the Welsh qualification is still very much in the throes of being looked at for the Welsh curriculum, not as GCSE that we know as Educas. There's a very good article in Language Today if you're a member of the LL, Getting More Skilled, and I would really encourage you not to have any knee-jerk reactions. And I know this was very much discussed at the LL conference. It's very difficult to kind of think, oh my gosh, this is so different. It isn't really that different. It's just certain things that are different. Exam board meetings which have been taking place have been the ones I've attended, and I've attended quite a few online and face-to-face. I've done a couple, but mainly online. They've gone through it in fine detail, careful scrutiny and discussion of those, and I know that both exam boards are more than happy for people from their area, from your area, to come in and talk to you about their exam boards. looking at the phonics, I think, is something that's so important. I think consistency, graphics, and actions are consistent with what you're teaching how you're teaching the phonics, how you're doing it. If you're using graphics, keep those consistent across your department, and actions again across your department, across your school if you can, because that then will allow students to go from year 7 through to year 11 and beyond. Those of you that teach A level, being able to understand that the teacher who had them in year 7 will use the same kind of things as they would in year 11. Obviously, the dictation and the read aloud and the question types are additional and different this with the new spec. The rubrics are in English, which will make things more accessible. And obviously, the deep dive on vocab and grammar is the biggest one for all of us, because it's different to what we've been having before. So some of the the thing that I have done with people that I'm working for, if you have your scheme of work might look like this, or it might be a textbook, it might be a knowledge organizer looking like this, it might just be a collection of vocabulary in a textbook, or it might be, as we call it, the vocab crunch. And we have this is vocab crunch that I've used for many a year since, well, I can't remember when I started using this, but it's been useful. And what I've done is the kind of screenshot that you see in the bottom corner there. I suggested to some colleagues that I was working with just before Christmas, I think we started this, was to make some kind of like sheets which have got English and Spanish or whatever language you're doing, and then the page and the column, so page location column. And what they've done is they've used gradually through the years, they've given it to their students in their class. Each one has been different, and they've asked the students to look in the textbooks or to look on the knowledge organisers or whatever it is that they keep their main vocabulary on as a department, and they've asked them to annotate where they find it, what location it was in. Was it on a knowledge organiser, whereabouts on the knowledge organiser, if it's in a column or if it's in a book, which book it was. And I can honestly say I've done this now with 4 trusts. 2 of the trusts have completely finished this, and they've now got a good handle on where the gaps are in their actual schemes of work. And the other 2, one just started it after Easter, and the other one is due to start it after Spring Bank. So they've now taken this on. A couple of trusts said it's not for them, and I've said fine if that's different, because I've worked with about 8 or 9 trusts since Christmas. But out of the 9 trusts I work with, 6 trusts have taken this on. And 2 trusts have told me it has worked really well for them. And we talked about this with quite a few staff at the LL conference with how this works. Okay, it's just to try and stop the amount of work that as teachers in departments are having to do it yourself. And I know that a lot of people are saying, well, you should also have some frequency tables with how often the word vida appears in your scheme of work. And I know some trusts have done that, some trusts that have got lots of teachers that can work on this, and NSELP did it as well with their schemes of work. But if you're working on your own as the only teacher in a school, or maybe you've got a small department, it can take you a long time to do that. And so this was basically the way that I came up with it, as maybe working where the students are involved and it supported the staff as well. Okay, so how you do assessment has been something that I've also worked on over the last many years that I've taught in, but certainly over the last sort of maybe 15-20 years when I've been working in trusts and working as a lead teacher. I've got the students to make a bingo card at the end of the lesson using the vocab and phrases from the lesson, and then I've collected those in, and I've actually been able to see where the issues are in terms of if a student, sometimes I've said put your name on the back so we know who it is in pencil, or no, don't put your name on the back. And I'll just take in, and if I don't have the names on, I can get a flavour of where the issues might be with what I've taught, and if there's been any misconceptions with spellings of words. And if I do get the name on the back, then I can see individually where there are some issues. And then the next lesson, I hand them out as a bingo card, and they start the lesson with that as a starter. The same way with them, in the same way I've done it at Noughts and Crosses game as well, and that they've started as a pair work. It's just giving you an idea of the assessment, but also it's giving you something to start your lesson with quite quickly. I've even used it with different classes as well, or I've maybe parked it and left it for maybe a month, and I've brought it out again as retrieval. You could ask your pupils to prepare a mind map to show what they've learned in the lesson and just look at that, and that's a good way of doing an assessment. Or asking them to write a short paragraph in the target language or English for your partner to translate. And again, you can take those in, have a quick look at them, keep them back and use them again at a later date or the next lesson. Or maybe, you know, you're absolutely up to your eyes in it, and you just think, right, I'm going to keep that for a lesson when I can actually get them to hand it out. It gives me 20 minutes to just get my act together, and it's an activity they can do. Another thing I've done is recorded a dialogue with the students. So they've actually recorded that in class, and we've used this with another class as an assessment. And the way they've done that is that the other class, if you've got 4 classes on in year 9, for example, we've kind of all done it as a department. So we've got 3 or 4 different assessments that we can just use with each other's classes. And the kids have enjoyed listening to it, not just as a kind of assessment quiz, but also can they spot somebody that they recognise on the recording, or they've kind of given marks for pronunciation, or they've just used it in different ways to assess using the assessment criteria. Another thing I've done is with till roll writing. When my brother was a child, I used to help him with his writing, and we had a butcher's business, and what we used to do was my father used to often change the till roll, and he would often I'd find these till rolls downstairs in the storeroom, and my brother was absolutely hated writing. So one time I thought, do you know what, we'll have a go at this. So we got some till rolls, and he wrote in beautiful writing lots of different words and lots of sentences that I was teaching him, because he's quite a bit younger than me, my brother. And I've brought that forward with me, and it's been a good, quite an entertaining but quite fun thing for some students to do. The snake writing is on the right hand side, and that's where the students have drawn a snake down, and I've said to them, right, this is what I want you to do this lesson. I want you to write me a piece of language, but you've got to write up to the snake. And that is giving students the opportunity then to not have to fill a full line. And you'd be surprised how much work you can get out of a student doing that who's a bit reluctant for writing. Draw a line on a page. If I know I've gone round the class and I've said, right, I've drawn a line, I said, I want you to write up to that line today, I want you to write up to that line today, then at least I know that a student will get to a certain position, and they're not just going to, you know, just do a couple of lines. I've set them a challenge to do that, and it allows me then to see that some students who are reluctant writers will get to that line, even if it's just a third of the page that I've asked them to write to. Excuse me. Rainbow writing again has worked with some reluctant writers in assessments where I've given them a set of different colours and they've written different things in different words. Some students have gone for blue for verbs, red for nouns. Some students haven't bothered. They've just used different colours because it's helped them to just engage with writing. Those of you that attended webinars that I've done before will be familiar with the phonics driving test and the dictionary driving test, and I'm not going to spend too much on that tonight. Know that we've done phonics driving tests and dictionary driving tests since the early 90s, so phonics has been on my radar, having worked with the city council that I was working with, and a very forward-thinking, proactive advisor that worked with us at the time, who got us into phonics, and so we've been doing that for a very long time. If you're interested in knowing how that works, please send me an email, and I'm more than happy to help you to spend some time telling you how it does. Okay, so another thing that I found has worked really well with year 11 particularly is emptying their mind at the beginning of a writing assessment, or if you do walking talking mocks. So basically we've given them 5 minutes at the beginning to look at the rubrics that they've been asked to answer, and to just basically write down as much as they can think of, and as many pieces of vocabulary, as many verbs, as many whatevers or phrases that they can think of, and then they start writing the assessment. That has allowed some students a planning time, but it's also allowing students who get tired after a few 20 minutes of writing that they've got something at least to hang on to make sure that they've included that in their writing. Another thing we've done is consequences, and you'll see at the bottom there where we've got the 6 columns, and you can see an example of a student, lots of students writing. I've asked them to take first of all, they get a piece of paper and they take something from the first column and they turn it over and they pass it on to a partner who takes something from the second column, and they do the same, and they then pass it around. They then open it up when they've gone through 6 people, and the person who gets it, they can either translate it, they can do a piece of extended writing with it, or they can just write it out in their book, and then they can just make sure that they understand what they're writing. This type of thing works well for pick and mix writing, or you can have a dice and you can just shake the dice and you work in pairs or in threes, and you have to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have to say what it is and make a sentence. On the gate quiz, when I worked in my last role with a large trust, it was really important that lots of SMT were on the gate in the morning to welcome the students, and every week we would have teachers from different departments. And what we would do is we would have these kind of revision cards or quiz cards, or you can see there are 5 in a box in a plastic, what do we call them, etui in German, pencil case, and I would have different levels in there or different topics. And basically what would happen is on the gate, the people who were on the gate would take out a piece of the revision card, they would open it up and they would ask some of the students on the gate. And it was often years 10 and 11 who would get this, but also we might have a focus of year 7 or a focus of year 6. And often in the schools that I was working at, each year group would have a different entrance to the school. That might not be possible in your school. If that is the possibility, then it makes it easier to divvy up the year 7s to 11 vocabulary. But in terms of just that thing, it just keeps languages on the boil. And some schools have gone for every half term they'll have a language week on the gate, or they'll have it every maybe once every 2 weeks or something. But it's just been a fun thing to get SMT involved, or heads of year or whatever you want to do. The cards around the school, we've done this as almost like a treasure hunt thing, and we've had different cards placed around the school, and it might have been year 8 week, and they've said, right, your cards around the school, there's 20 cards, you've got to find them, and the first 40 in the year group to come will get a raffle ticket into a prize. And we've done a similar thing with cards at the front of the class. So, for example, if I'm using a text from an exam paper or any text from any textbook, if a particular word comes up and there's more than 50% of the class that don't know it, I will ask one person at the front to be my scribe, and I'll change that scribe as the year goes on, and they'll write the word with the English on the back and they'll give it to me, and I'll place it at the front, and then we'll use those in the start of activity every so often, if not every lesson, just to keep coming back to the words. What word is this? Give me the English, give me the French, whatever language it is. And it's amazing for retrieval, and once I've used one card, it will go to the bottom of the pile, and then the next lesson, if we get another 2, they'll just be added to the pile, and the pile will just get bigger and bigger. But do you know what? It actually works for retrieval and helping with vocab, particularly with this current legacy GCSE. Also, what I've done is supporting students. We've had these kind of like bookmarks here. There's three of these that have been different. I think 2 of these are German and 1 is French. I've got these in German, French. I haven't got them in Spanish, but I do have them in German, French, and they've been great for bookmarks. And you can see here some bookmarks that have been helping the students make their own bookmarks, or I've made them for them, and I've said I want you to make sure that you're including as many of these phrases, which are usually pertinent to their level, so it's not overwhelming them, because I've gone through many years of trying to get students to learn things, and if you try and overcomplicate language for them, they just come unstuck in the exam, and they'll try and learn something off by heart, and they'll learn, they'll miss a word out. So I always try and gauge the level that they're at. And the badges that you can see in the bottom right hand corner are just lots of schools now have badges that students have to wear, like an ID badge or whatever. And this idea came from an English colleague of mine, actually. I used to work with at my last trust. They had some round badges where they would have quotes on for their books, and they would change them regularly so that each child would wear a different badge every so often. So I thought we can do something with that in languages. So we have them with the vocabulary on, and then once a week in assembly, the students will change their lanyard that they wear on top. So it's just a lanyard that fits over the old one. It's just a clip on, and you can get those from Amazon. I bought quite a lot on eBay, actually, about 2 years ago. It cost me about £40, and I think I bought, I don't know, 8,000 of them, and they worked really, really well for the trust at the time. So with Language Nut, those of you that are not subscribers to us might want to have a demo, or might want to have a trial with Language Nut, but we have just launched all our new exam series vocabulary, and you can see here it has worked really, really well. We've also now been endorsed by Pearson for the Spanish exam resources at Key Stage 4, and we're just going through the same process for French, and German will follow on the back of that. And so you can see here that on our website, you can look at the Edexcel and AQA resources. We have different exam series for both exam boards. In addition to that, we have the vocab trainer for the specifications for the new exam boards, as well as the legacy exam boards. And you can see we've also got in excess of 45 verbs in different tenses here that you can see as I've put on. Excuse my Spanish pronunciation. I'll probably imaginar or any of the Spanish verbs that you want. You'll see them in those tenses. And also, it's all about how you do it. It's all about making your job easier. And our extensive admin area helps you to do that. And you can see here, you can drill down to see how your students are getting on in phonics, which the top left screen there shows you which phonics may well be causing issues for your class, and you can then see if there are any that you need to do anything about. And then there are some different ways of showing how your students and also how classes are performing based upon tasks that you set them to do as an assignment, and that's mainly listening and reading. But also we have on our listening and reading, we have open questions, and we also have on the writing and the speaking, it's all teacher marked, but it's all accessible for you to then have your marks on the platform. And this is another way in the bottom right hand corner where you can see how you can see what issues your students are struggling with, and what are their strengths, and what things they need to work on in regard their skills. So I spoke a little bit earlier about the phonics, and I told you we talked a little bit about how phonics is important, keeping it consistent. Here we've got some examples of a phonics freeze, which you can have around the classroom. You can point when you hear it, and I've always done that with my schools, and I've said, right, we'll change these as often as we can, which are the most eye-catching, and we've tried to put them around the room like you would in a child's nursery. You might put your students under a time pressure for recovering sounds. I want you to see how many sounds you can listen in this in 1 minute. You might have a phonics mat on your table, or you might use flipped learning. And again, here's a screenshot from one of our phonics. You can see our phonics that we have there for German, and they might look at the phonics before the lesson. They could use a phone or a mirror, a phone camera or a mirror. Lots of schools don't allow phones now, so it's a bit difficult to do that. But I've always had a set of mirrors in my classroom, which originally I started by borrowing from science, and then I started bringing them. I bought some for my department, and it's really great that the students can watch themselves and see how that sound looks, when you're actually saying it, because it does help them to kind of memorize the sounds and get them right when they're having to read aloud and when they're having to listen to dictation. The phonics caramba is very much similar to the vocab caramba, where you have a set of lollipop sticks, and you have a word on one side, and on the other side it will give you the sound, and you work in a pair of 2 or 3. You pull a stick out and you have to identify the sound that's on the word. And you turn it over. If you get it right, you keep the stick. If you get it wrong, you put it back in, and it goes to another person in the group. If you pull out a word, a lollipop set that says caramba on it, then you have to put all your sticks back in and you're starting again. And then you've got reading for sound, which is quite good to do with this bonsoir, je m'appelle Antoine Noir, and all that kind of thing, which is it's great to try and sort of get your students into that frame of mind. Okay. Here we've got, I think I might have skipped that. Here we've got our phonics here, and you'll see how they work. We've got our Feed the Correct Penguin, which is one of our most popular games. We've got our taking a shot at the actual thing to do with the pineapple. We've got our find the sheep that's got the wrong sound on it, and we've got our whacking the avocados, which again, if you've not seen these before, please do get in touch with us and have a demo, or at least have a trial, and see how much fun your students can have with phonics. So the read aloud, there's so much going on with read aloud out there. There's so many different people putting great stuff out that I don't want to spend too much time on this tonight, but in certainly making read aloud part of every lesson. We've all done lots of read aloud, just like looking at transcripts, looking at just reading something aloud for your students, or just talking to them a little bit, preparing the ground for the read aloud. Briefly explain the theme to them and ask them what might be said. Brainstorm any vocab that might come up. Just gives them that support to be able to access the read aloud activity. You could display the words on the board and ask them what they think it might be about, or you could actually display the words in the wrong order and get them to try and work out which way the words need to go. You might even preview the text and the vocab and predict what might cause issues in the read aloud. Or they might scan the text and you might point out any new words or sounds to them, or are there any cognates or any false friends. You might read the text out and make some mistakes and trip over some words and get the students to actually listen and hear you do that. And we know that that's really powerful, letting them see what kind of mistakes you can make. But you might model your own thoughts aloud whilst you're reading, maybe using a visualizer. You might have a piece of writing there, you scan something on, you go through it and you model your own thoughts whilst you're doing that. Or you might stop at certain points during the piece that you're reading to explain your thinking. You might read aloud with an emotion. You might be sad, you might be happy, you might be angry, you might be drunk, something like that. The pupils do the same in pairs. You might read the text and stop and ask the pupils to shout out the next word, or to say the next word, or to discuss it with a partner what the next word's going to be. You might use markers on the text to support intonation, which AQA do not allow you to do, but EdXL do. So that might be something that is affecting your choice of board in terms of what you're going to do for the new GCSE. You might give two versions of the sound and get the students to point to the one that they think it is, or stand up and go to a certain corner. Is it that one or is it that one? Students like to put their fingers in their ears when they're reading aloud from a text. That way it's kind of putting them in their own little bubble. And it also means that they don't think that somebody else is hearing them, but you are. And again, it could be a paired read aloud where your partner reads to the student and they have to write down what they hear. Again, you're killing two birds with one stone there. Lots of things that I've done in the past are following with a finger or a ruler, and I've seen students in mock exams now actually following the finger with a ruler with a read aloud task, and they're actually using a ruler to read it aloud in the exam. Shining a light on a word. If you've got a set of torches, you could actually have a read aloud in front of your students and they follow it, and then you say, right, a word that's missing, they have to you're reading it, they have to shine a light on the word that's missing, as just a bit of fun really, to do something a little bit different. On the right hand side there you can see some reading frames that I made, and this is basically a piece of cut out card with some acetate on that we used to use for the old OHPs, and basically a lot of students have found that quite useful. And believe it or not, particularly at A level, for students who are reading longer text, I've got different shapes of that, and they can just hone in on a particular piece of the text just to try and help them with the reading aloud and also with comprehension. And they've worked tremendously well with students who struggle with reading, but also maybe are dyslexic. We've coloured different coloured foils and film in the reading frame. The mirrors I've talked about looking at yourself in a mirror. Bit of fun with the read aloud glasses, and again we've had students with read aloud. They might have had one phrase in the present tense, one in the past, and the present people, they've walked around the classroom and they've had to find their partner, and then when they've found their partner they read the text and they change it over. And you might have some that are reading aloud the glasses in the present tense and they wear a read aloud tie if they're doing it in the past tense. It's just a bit of fun. Same you can do with question and answers if you're doing an actual speaking lesson. Phone timers are quite good for how quickly can you read something, or just a timer. Timers are great for languages. You have them on the class, you see how quickly can you retrieve this list of words, and they record that in the margin, and then they do it again in 4 weeks time. Can they do it quicker? The same vocabulary, you have to, I've put like week 1 vocab list 1A, and I've done it in 29 seconds, and they've gone back a few weeks later, week 1 vocab list I've done 29. How quick can I do it this week? I've done it in 31. I've gone back a bit, but I'm going to try my best to improve that for the third time we do it. And again, for students that don't do homework and don't like homework, I've said to them, right, put 5 words in your planner and I want you to learn these for next week. Or I might say, right, what did we learn week 4 in term 1? And they've gone back and they've had to see if they could recall the words from that. To have songs as a background noise and you've dictated something, that's quite funny, is that, because you're playing a song in French, Spanish or German, and then you're dictating something, and the students, it's just getting them used to doing something with a little background noise and trying to sort of zone out of that and be able to kind of like understand what's white noise, but I'm going to have a go at it. And we've all done songs, and here's a few examples of what you can do. Just singing a song, and as they sing it they have to write it down. Okay, so I'm conscious that I've got 13 minutes to go. I'll probably be finished in about 4 or 5 minutes if I go at the speed I can go at without rushing it and without tripping up over words. So those of you that attended any of my webinars in the past will be familiar with martini verbs, and I absolutely do not make any apologies for using martini verbs. I've used it since about year 2 or 3 of my teaching, and it comes from a very old 70s advert, which is anytime, any place, anywhere. But I've always thought if your students know the martini verbs, in other words, a set of verbs that you know, and I think I've put them on the next section here. These are the words that I've always gone with for French, because I've always thought that these words were the ones that they could use with whatever scenario comes up, whatever topic comes up. They can use these in the present, past, and the future. Then that's great. Okay, and I've used different ways to teach them, of which are on this slide. Okay, again, I've got these for French, Spanish, and German. If anybody wants them, more than welcome to have them. And then also as something here, which again, I've updated this actually for the new specification. Dictate 5 from a list as a starter. We all know how busy we are. You come in, you're running in, you've just been on duty, you're teaching 5-6 lessons a day, and you've not had a break for goodness knows how long. Right, you've got this in front of you. Right, class, write me down 5 instruments or 5 numbers, and then I want you to make me a sentence with that. Or you could actually say to them, right, here's the colours, give me 5. Okay, 5 animals. And this way your students are getting the bespoke words that they can remember. It's also great for a cover cover lesson, or for anybody who needs to just set some work as just for a part of a lesson, if you've got to nip out for something, a meeting or something. And also maybe for your speaking test, your students have got to recall these, and you can add to this or take away from it. This is in English, so it can be used in any language, and you can do all sorts with it. You can ask them to make a sentence with it. You can ask them to make a sentence with a colour, an animal, and a body part, or a colour, a family member, accommodation, and transport, or a colour and a family member, or colour and a linking word, or an adverb and a transport. You go that way and they tick it off, and there's so many different ways you can use this. This was a resource that one colleague of mine many years ago came up with. It's called a onesie, and we worked tirelessly as a trust to bring these together. And again, I've got so many of these, and these are great for cover lessons, but they're also great as a resource to use in different ways. And it's about how you do it. And we know Kate Languages does an awful lot of stuff to do with one text and how you exploit one text. This is a very similar thing. It's about making the most of just having one text rather than 50 slides on your PowerPoint, or even 20 or even 10. You only need a couple, and if you can actually exploit that as much as you can, then you know that you spent time making that resource, but you're going to be able to get as much out of it as you can. And I must admit, I'm a big fan of that. I've done it a lot because I've seen a lot of progress with that. It's not something I think works, it's something I know works because I've seen it happen and I've done it myself. And then just a little bit different, some of the stuff that I've done, I've talked about the glasses and the things, just a little bit different of how you do it, getting the students to wear glasses if they're questioners, a little thing around their neck if they're person giving the answer. Balancing clouds and butterflies is something that's worked really well for me, where we've done a little bit of cutting out and a little bit of sticking, and then on the back they've written loads of words and stuff, and they've made a decoration. We've done some pebble writing, and again, that's something which you can, if you're allowed to take your kids off into the grounds of the school and grab some pebbles. If not, you might have to find them yourselves. And also writing on balloons. That can be a bit of an issue if you've got students in there that like to pop them and give you a bit of give you a little bit of trouble. So stay away from that if that's the kind of student you've got. And also the Oscars. We've also had an Oscar for the student who's remembered the most vocab or who's improved the most. And I think I'm just about near the end. So this 3 more slides to go. This one is an activity that I've done with secondary level pupils at the end of a section of teaching. So again, I went to got some very cheap t-shirts that wash, and we wrote dialogues, did revision, and the students wore them in the run up to the exam. You need to get permission of your head for that, but my heads have always said, great, we'll let you do it. It's a great thing to do. Obviously you can't wear them in the exam, but it's great for them to sort of wear around school over their school uniform just for a couple of days before, and it may just be helping the students to remember some vocabulary. It could be stuff like just keywords, it could be past participles, it could be linking words, whatever. The other thing is the concept bands, which again have been useful to help weaker students remember vocab, but also sentences maybe that they need to help them with their their discussion after they've done their role play and the photo card. And then looking at my sheet here, I think we'll probably skip the last one. But again, here we've got some examples of key rings. So the students have had their own key rings with their own vocab in that they struggle with words they can't say properly. I'm teaching a boy at the moment who's struggling with his umlaut, so he's got a key ring with all the umlaut words in and sounds. You might use tablecloths in the same way that you use, washable ones or paper ones. I've had students who've loved to create cover boxes in paper and write on them because that's the way they remember things. Here's an example here of where I've got students in groups of 3. One student's laid on the floor, they've drawn around them, and then they've basically filled it with words that go with the body, or what words do you associate with the head? You think of thinking, speaking, spelling, hearing, all that kind of thing. Karaoke works well. Mirrors we've already talked about. Caramba is a similar thing here with vocabulary instead of phonics. So you've got one language on the one side and then you've got the English on the other, and the same thing applies. You pull a stick out, you can say the opposite word, you keep it and you have another go. Or you put it back and the next person has a go, and if you pull out the one that says caramba on it, then you have to put them all in and you have none left. Here we've got a stick word match, which helps with students who have got very low literacy levels, and keeping all your nouns together, keeping them colour coded, keeping them blocked together, and keeping that consistency with how you show your vocabulary has also worked really well to help students to remember things. These are my contact details. Enquiries@languagenot.com if you want to have a demo or speak to one of us about what we're doing with our new resources. My email is there if you want to have a copy of this PowerPoint, or you can contact us at Enquiries and that will get pushed back through to me. So I'm hoping that something from today's session you're going to be able to pick up and run with. I will say good evening to everyone. Have a great evening. Good luck with the rest of you that are still working on your speaking tests, and do visit our webinars, which are free to see on our website. If you look on LanguageNot's website at the top, you'll see webinars, and we do have 3 webinars that we ran last year on top tips for language teaching, revision on listening, reading and writing for those of you that might need some support or some fresh ideas if you're running extra revision classes or in the run up to the other exams.